and crying. From far to late, I was wringing my hands and crying. Yes, I believe to my soul now that your dad is go bound. From Memphis to Norfolk is a 36-hour ride. From Memphis to Norfolk is a 36-hour ride. Yes, and a man's like a prisoner and is never satisfied. I'm gonna leave this town, I bid you farewell. I'm gonna leave this town, bid you farewell. Yes, I shall return again, I'll have a grand story to tell. Alright, that was From 4 Till Late by Robert Johnson. Today we're going to be discussing the ins and outs of that song. This lesson is coming to you alongside my new Robert Johnson Volume 2 ebook release. In it are 10 songs. 10 songs discussed in great detail. It's an ebook with 70 pages in it, complete with everything, tablature, chord diagrams, and whatnot. Definitely check it out on my website and in the information settings. Alright, so I'm super excited to be presenting this song to you. This is definitely a classic jazzy inspired tune by Robert Johnson. And this is a tune that is played in E standard tuning. And it's actually pitched at E. So in order to play this guitar, any acoustic guitar or nylon string guitar will do. It doesn't really matter. I would defer away from playing any electric guitars for this instance. I like to utilize also plastic finger picks. Again, if you don't have it, that's okay. But it helps me strike the strings, and it produces a crisp tonality when you do strike the picks against the string. So I definitely recommend that. If you haven't already, check out my beginning finger picking patterns videos 1 through 4 as a prerequisite in studying any of my material that I present. Now, moving along. In order to begin, like I've stated, you needed a guitar. Finger picks is also pretty good. If you haven't already, having the ebook alongside with you is very easy to understand and follow, because that's what I'm following when I teach this music. It's very easy to understand and very laid out in there, especially this song, which features all sorts of chord diagrams that we're going to talk about. Alright, so in order to begin, let's tune our guitars together. We're tuned exactly to what you hear in the original recording, the way Robert Johnson plays it. So my top string is going to be an E, so let's go ahead and play that and match your pitch to mine. Alright, my fifth string is going to be an A. My fourth string is going to be a D. My third string is going to be a G. My second string is going to be a B. And finally, my bottom string is going to be an E. So go ahead and play a C chord. So essentially this song is played in the key of C. All of the chords are congruent in the key of C, and they're going to be revolving around C, F, G7, you'll see D7 in there, and A7 as well. Pretty straightforward and pretty easy to understand. Now, if you haven't already, check out my finger picking pattern videos. I always talk about positioning the right hand, which is very important. As you followed on in my other videos, I like to position the hand like this. The outer lining of the palm of your hand is resting above the hole here in the guitar hole. Your thumb juts out like this, and it's going to be positioned resting over the fifth string. The thumb is going to dictate the bass accompaniment throughout much of these lessons and Delta blues music in general. Now, the index and middle finger, which I have finger picks on, they're going to be available to strike the first, second, and third strings as needed, depending on the melody involved. So essentially, you'll have this combination where you're pinching the thumb and the index and middle finger together to produce the composition. So I incorporate some of the elements of this finger picking discipline in this song, although you can get around it without knowing how to do that. So I've talked about the right hand position, and all you need is an acoustic guitar. So now we can start by looking at the introduction. So let's take a brief pause here. Okay, so the introduction is very typical in a lot of Robert Johnson's arrangements, not only in C but A and D. So it's about having this turnaround sequence happening on a C chord. Essentially, you're locating the fourth and the first strings, and you're going to be playing a series of double stops, which is in a winding down motion. You see that in a lot of his music. If you have followed along in Me and the Devil Blues and Kind-Hearted Woman, he does that over the A chord. Or in Drunken Hearted Man over the D chord. Okay, so if you listen to the original recording, that's essentially what he's doing also. So in order to begin, we're going to play this sequence, and I'm going to play it here to set us up here from scratch, and then we'll break it down together. So the introduction will sound like this. Okay, so that's the introduction. The first measure, you are going to locate the 8th fret. You're going to take your pinky and position it on the bottom string on the 8th fret. Your middle finger is going to locate the 4th string on the 8th fret. Okay, and you're going to play a double stop, the thumb playing the 4th string and the index or middle finger playing the bottom string. You're going to play that together in a pinching motion. So the first 4 notes in this introduction stay on that 8th fret. So you're going to play a sequence of 4 notes here, and it'll sound like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now you're going to move, you're going to now take your index finger and you're going to position it on the 4th string 7th fret, but your pinky will always remain idle and position over the 8th fret bottom string. So that now that we've moved this middle finger and made it the index finger over the 7th fret 4th string, you're going to play a series of 5 notes there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the first 4 notes, again, going from the beginning, it's 1, 2, 3, 4. Then you shift to the 7th fret and you play that 5 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then you shift with the index finger is now going to position over the 6th fret 4th string, and again your pinky always remains idle and stationed on the bottom string 8th fret. So now over the 6th fret with this position and this fingering, you're going to play that 4 times. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So from the beginning it's this wind down from the 8th, 7th, 6th, and then finally you're going to stretch out that index finger over to the 5th fret 4th string, and your pinky's going to be remaining idle and stationed on the bottom string 8th fret, and you're going to play that twice. So it's from the beginning, it's 1, 2, 3, 4. Then it's 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. And you don't have to get it note for note, but it's this general wind down, and he plays it rather pretty fast in pace. And then he pauses a little bit after that. And that's a slowed up version. So after he plays that measure, he now moves over out of this position here from the 5th and 8th fret, and he goes right away and he starts to finger a C7 chord. But before he plays the full chord entirely, he kicks off by playing the 5th string, that C note here. He plays that twice. It's like a transitionary bass kickoff before he plays the full C7 chord. So he plays that twice. 1, 2, 3. And on the third try, he plays the full chord. 1, 2, 3. But as you're playing this bass note, you're already sort of getting in position to finger that C7 chord. Alright, so in this sequence we have the chord diagrams laid out. He's going to play a series of reoccurring chords that reappear throughout the song. And they're going to be C7, F, F minor 7, and G7 are going to be predominant. And they're in the key of C. So in this next measure, we talked about this. So the second part of that introduction is this will sound like this. Alright, and that's what we're going to talk about here. So like I demonstrated earlier, you move over from here and you position your hand here to finger the C7 chord. You start off with the 2 bass notes. 1, 2, play the C7 chord. You're going to play that once, and now you're going to go finger a small F chord here, not like this, but like this, as a quicker way in this turnaround sequence. So you go from C7, you play an F once, one time, then you play an F minor 7, which is going to be a total bar on the 1st fret from the 4th string down to the 1st string. Or at least that's where I strike the strings. You play a downstroke there. And then the last chord in that sequence is just a regular old G7. So that sequence from the beginning, that's the portion with the chords will sound like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then the last measure, he plays the G7 chord twice, with a G7 also turning into a G at the very end. So the last 2 strums in that sequence will be a G7, G, before he goes into the first verse. So from the beginning, so it will sound like this. 1, 2, and those are the final 2 strums there. So in all, slowly it's you kick into the bass, 1, 2, C7, F, F minor 7, G7, G7, G. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And that's the introduction. So now we're going to go over to the first verse, which is going to kick off, pretty much remain steady across the remaining stanzas. So if you have the chord diagram available to you, he's recycling some chords you're going to see throughout. But in this portion, in the verse, I'll just play it here. He goes, "From far too late, I was wringing my hands and crying." Alright, there's a series of chord combinations here. So he has a C chord, and then while he's fingering the C chord, he shifts. You've got the middle finger positioned on the 2nd fret 4th string, playing that E note. That's going to come down, the middle finger is going to come down and is now going to play over an A note on the 3rd string, 2nd fret. And you're going to be, this chord is a C6 add 2. It's kind of like a rock and roll boogie rhythm for a C chord. So again, you got that C position here. You play a C chord, and then the middle finger jumps down from the 4th string to the 3rd string on the 2nd fret, and you play that chord. So that's the C6 add 2. And then you go back to the C chord there. So in this sequence here, he plays a series of 4 strums here in the portion where he sings "From 4 till late." And what he's saying here is "From 4 too late." 4 strums here. You kick off by positioning the C chord. You play the 5th string. While you're chording that C chord, you play the 5th string separately once. Then you play the full chord afterwards. From 4. Then you take your middle finger, come down to the 3rd string, 2nd fret, play that C6 chord, and this is the part where he says till. From 4 till. Then back to the C chord. Late. From 4 till late. Pretty straightforward. From 4 too late. And then the other portion of that verse will sound like this. I was wringing my hands and crying. Alright? And in that portion is a sequence of 7 notes. So the first 5 are going to appear like this. You're going to say, in the portion where he says, I was wringing my hands, when he says the word I, he's playing a C again. Then you're going to play the F chord twice after that, the small F chord. Was ringing, I was ringing, 1, 2, 3. Then while you're playing this F chord here, the small F chord, the pinky, which is free at the moment, is going to finger the 2nd string on the 3rd fret. You're going to play that F7 chord here. Okay? So you play that only once before resolving it back to that F chord. Alright, so from the beginning of that it's you play C, F7, F, back to C. So it's from the beginning it's from 4 too late, I was wringing my hands and crying. So again, it's that sequence going from that later half of that measure, it's I was wringing my hands and crying. So altogether it's C, F, F, F7, F, C. Ringing, so it's from 4 too late, I was wringing my hands and crying. Right? So and the nature of strums can be fluid here. It doesn't have to be note for note. So that sequence again, that later half is so we play the C chord, 1, down to the F chord, 2, play the F chord again, 3, then play the F7 chord, 4, back to the F5, then play the F again, 6, back to 7 on the C chord. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. From 4 too late, I was wringing my hands and crying. Pretty good, pretty simple sequence of chords, and that's something that he carries across the other stanzas. It's laid out pretty easy to understand, pretty straightforward on the actual ebook itself. I can show you kind of how it looks like. I have all of the chords laid out for you, very easy to understand and follow. Okay, so that is the verse, and after he plays that, he plays a peculiar lick on the utilizing licks in C, like a wind down. That's what we're going to look at next. Okay, so continuing on that first verse, we talked about playing this portion. From 4 too late, I was wringing my hands and crying. And after he plays that, he jumps into this sequence, which reappears throughout the entire song. And it will sound like this. And then what you're going to do here to play that position is you're going to play this sequence here, this lick on a C based off of a C chord. You're going to find the 3rd fret bottom string. You're going to finger that with your index finger, and with your ring finger, you're going to play the 2nd string on the 5th fret. Your thumb is now going to jump down and play the 2nd string, and your index or middle finger is going to play on the 1st string as you play this sequence. So this chording here is played 3 times. And you're just playing here at the bottom 2 strings. But I play it with a finger picking pattern with my thumb and index and middle finger. 1. So I strike in that sequence. You're maintaining this chording, but you're really striking the 2nd string with the thumb, and then with the index finger you're playing that next note on the bottom string, while continuing with the thumb on the 2nd string. So there's a movement of 3 notes here. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Try to do that. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so you play that sequence of 3 notes there, then shift the same chording now over to the 2nd and 4th fret, maintaining that same fingering, and then you apply the same. It's 3 notes again. 2nd string, 1st string, 2nd string. Okay, so the first 6 notes will be like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you're going up the neck. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Then you go over to the 1st and 3rd fret, maintaining that position. And you play that once. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Then that 1st finger shifts up to the second string on the first fret, and you play that note by itself, then that ring finger jumps up to the fifth string and plays the fifth string on the third fret, that C note, that bass note, before going to the full C7 chord. So that sequence from the beginning is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. One, two, three, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Then he plays a sequence of the 7 chord 4 times or so. So after that it's a strum on the C7 chord 4 times. So from the beginning it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, C7. Whenever I play a C7 chord, I have a tendency to play the top string on the third fret to make it a more harmonious, richer chord by adding that additional G note on the top there. 4 strums there. So that's that first measure, that first verse we've taken care of, at least for the first stanza. Now we're going to transition to the second part of the verse here, which is going to be now locked in on the 4 position. In a 1-4-5 progression, we're in the 4 position now, we're playing concepts in F. And in this part, this is something that reoccurs across the remaining stanzas as well, except for the last one. So in this portion he says, from 4 to late, I was wringing my hands and crying. Alright, so we'll talk about that portion here. So that first measure is a series of 5 strums here. He's going to play the F chord, and he's going to play that 5 times. So 1, 2, 3, and on the 4th time he takes his pinky, and in this sequence Johnson likes to with the pinky do like an accent either on the bottom string or the second string. But in this sequence it appears that he's playing on that bottom string, 3rd fret. So the series of 5 strums on the F chord will sound like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. That pinky is now on that 4th strum is going to finger the bottom string on the 3rd fret, and then it's going to come off to play that final 5th strum. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Alright, so it's from 4 to late. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then in that second measure, he extends out that F for briefly for 1 strum before going into this F minor 7 chord. So again, it's from the beginning. It's from 4 to late. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 4 to late. And then the part where he says, ring in my hands, he now positions the F minor 7 chord, which is again a bar on the 1st fret, which we discussed earlier. And he plays that 5 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And again, on that 4th strum, he he puts his pinky on the bottom string on the 3rd fret to add that little accent before jumping to the C major chord. So that sequence will sound like this from the beginning. Will be from 4 to late, I was wringing my hands and crying. So it's, and you can play all down strums in this sequence. So leading into that lick, which we discussed before this, will sound like this. From 4 to late, I was wringing my hands and crying. So I'll go a little bit slower again, leading in with that lick. From 4 to late, I was wringing my hands and crying. That was a little too slow there. So it's from 4 to late, I was wringing my hands and crying. A simple, steady progression there. So that's that F portion, which is going to reappear across the stanzas. So after he plays that portion, he goes back into this lick again. But except he's going to do something a little bit different here. And well, as he does this lick, it's the same. You got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So when he gets to this portion here with the lick, the 2nd string on the 1st fret, the next note, instead of going to that C note on the 5th string on the 3rd fret, he's going to now get ready to play an A7 chord. And he's going to go from this note here on the 1st fret, 2nd string, to the 3rd string on the 2nd fret, which is the A. So he'll go to that 3rd string on the 2nd fret and then play the open string on the 5th string after that. And then he'll play 6 strums on the A7 chord. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that lick will turn into this. From the beginning is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. He's in that A7 chord. So going back to that F sequence, we'll lead into it. From 4 to late, I was wringing my hands and crying. Let me do that one more time. A7 chord. 4 too late, wringing my hands and crying. So I play that a little bit faster, but he's in that A7 chord, and then we're gonna go over the final sequence where he goes into a D7 F sharp. I believe to my soul now that your dad is gold bound, and that's what we'll go over here next. Alright, so beforehand we talked about the sequence in F, then the lick, back to that A7 chord, and then in this next sequence he begins the singing with I believe to my soul now that your dad is gold bound. finishes off the first verse entirely. So after this A7 chord, he starts his singing, I believe to my soul now. And you're going to play a D7 slash F sharp. So you'll finger a D7 chord, and your thumb is now going to clamp down on the top string on the 2nd fret, and you're gonna with the thumb play that top string, and the index finger will slop back and play the bottom 3 strings. It's typical Delta style strumming pattern. I believe to my soul now. He's playing like a rough chord sequence there, and he's essentially playing that. It's a series of like 6 strums. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I believe to my soul now. I believe to my soul now. And it's kind of played rather in the original recording sounds a bit faint. I believe to my soul now. And in the portion after that D7 slash F sharp chord, he'll start to play a G7 chord right after that. And this is the portion where he says that your daddy's golf ball. And it's the same strumming practice over the G7 chord. Thumb plays the bass, and the index finger slots back against the hole here. This really crisp, almost dead thumb style technique. Play that 6 times there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it's again going back to that D7 F sharp. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, D7. I believe to my soul now that your daddy's gallports. I believe to my soul now that your daddy's gallport. G7. And in that part where it goes Gulfport, in the word bound, he already now plays the C7 chord after that G7. Gulfport bound. Gulfport bound. And then that ends that strumming pattern. Then he goes into a quickened version of what we talked in the introduction. In that introduction, we talked about this version. So he plays this sequence. He plays that similarly to that portion of the introduction now appears at the end of this verse. So after the ending of those 2 strums, it's I believe to my soul now that your daddy's gallport bound. And then he plays this sequence of chords, which I laid out here in the ebook. The ending of that verse will sound like this. And that's going to be, you're going to play, in that Gulfport bound, he now starts his wind up to this sequence. And in that sequence, you are going to still remain fingering that G7 chord. And you're going to play the 5th string alone, just that bass note on that C. And then you're going to strum the C7 chord here after that. So you play, in this chord sequence, you always start off with the bass note first, followed by the actual chord. So it's 2 of each. So the first sequence is C7, which is bass, chord. Then he goes to the F chord here. You finger that, and you start off with again the bass note there, the F note on the 4th string, followed by the chord. Then you play the F minor 7 chord here. You kick off with the bass note again, which in this case would be a D sharp on the 4th string. Then you play the G7 chord, and that's going to be an open string on the G string, followed by the chord. Then he stays on that G7 chord and then ends in the G. So that sequence is, remember, 2 of each. In the chord progression of C7, F, F minor 7, and G7, he plays a sequence of 2 combinations. The bass note followed by the actual chord. So from the beginning, it will sound like this. So C7 will be 1, 2, now 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So it's kind of played in a faster motion. Or you can just play that kind of chord sequence pretty fast. And then you'll have the final 2 strums on the G chord. So that ends the first verse, and all of the concepts demonstrated thus far are going to reappear against the remaining stanzas. However, there's going to be a reoccurring lick, which we're going to talk about in the next part here, where he's going to be playing a combination of double stops that are very tricky. So that's where we're going to pay our attention to next. Okay, so across the remaining stanzas that feature in this song, he continues with the same sort of chord progressions. So now we're in the second verse where he's talking about from Memphis to Norfolk, and it will sound like this. From Memphis to Norfolk. And instead of playing this portion on the F chord, which is a 36-hour ride, he does something that replaces this portion played on the F chords. And he's going to instead substitute a combination, a lick based on double stops that feature over the 7th and 8th fret over the 1st and 3rd strings. And then the 2nd fret. And it's a very characteristic staple of this song, which is actually kind of hard to incorporate within timing. So you have to sort of capture that and follow along as best as you can. So what I'm referring to is going to sound like this. From Memphis to Norfolk is a 36-hour ride. 36-hour ride. 36-hour ride. And this is going to reoccur throughout the remaining stanzas. I want to. Someone's always running through its drawers, and you'll get to hear that. But so that sequence happening now is you continue with this from Memphis to Norfolk is a 36-hour ride, and we'll go over that. So this first portion we already talked about, but in playing these double stops, there's going to be a combination of 6 notes based on these double stops. Your thumb is going to come down and is going to play over the 3rd string, and your index or middle finger is going to pinch the 1st string. You're going to play these, the 1st and 3rd strings individually, pinching them together, but you'll never strike the 2nd string. It's just a pinch, a double stop is what this is called. And you are going to locate the 7th fret. Your middle finger is going to be positioned on the 3rd string 7th fret, and your ring finger is going to finger the bottom string on the 7th fret. So this is the double stop. Okay, so you play that first, then you quickly hammer on into the 8th fret, maintaining that same chording. You play that. So it's 1, 2, and then you go back to the 7th fret again and play that combination once more. So in all, it's a sequence of 4 notes here. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's from Memphis to Norfolk is a 36-hour, 36-hour. But you play it rather fast. And then you go, the 5th note in the sequence now goes over to the 2nd fret, maintaining that same chording of the double stop. You play that once, and then you play the 3rd string and 1st string open. So 6 notes in all will sound like this. From Memphis to Norfolk is a 36-hour ride. 36-hour ride. 6 notes there. And after he plays that open, he starts to position to play a C chord, C major. 36-hour ride. He plays a C chord once or twice after that. 36-hour ride. So that the beginning of that measure now will sound like this. From Memphis to Norfolk is a 36-hour ride. 36-hour ride. C chord. And I'll play that really slow now. From Memphis to Norfolk is a 36-hour ride. And that combination of double stops is going to reappear against the remaining stanzas. So the next one will sound like this. A man is like a prisoner, so man's always ran through his drawers. No, I got those lyrics wrong. So it's, a woman is like a dresser, so man's always running through his drawers. Always running through his drawers. You apply that against the other ones. Or from 4 to late, she get with a no good bunch and clown. No good bunch and clown. You gotta kind of play it pretty fast. Alright, so anyways, nonetheless, after he plays that sequence, he goes back into the lick on C. From Memphis to now he's in F. Memphis to Norfolk is a 36-hour ride. A7, and it don't do nothing. Or yeah, so and then he says, and a man's like a prisoner, D7, and he's never, G7, satisfied, C7. Then back to that. that sequence. And then he goes into the next verse, which is, I don't remember, it's, from four to late, she gave it a no good bunch and clown. From four to late, she gave it a no good bunch and clown. Yes, and it don't do nothing but tear a good man's reputation down. So that's that verse. And again, you're repeating the same concepts against what we've already talked about, against the other stanzas. Now, at the last stanza, he does something a little bit different from the other ones, and that's what we're going to talk about, and then we'll lead to the conclusion. All right, so in the last stanza, Johnson intensifies his take on the using the double stops, and it's going to sound like this. The last verse of the song goes like this. I'm gonna leave this town, I'll bid you farewell. See, I'm gonna leave this town, bid you farewell. So it's this portion which is different, and it's leave this town, bid you farewell. And that's what we'll talk about. Instead of, in the previous stanzas, he goes like, I'm gonna leave this town, I'll bid you farewell, which he's entirely in F. He substitutes that part in this stanza to sound something like this. I'm gonna leave this town, bid you farewell. Alright, and that's something that we'll go over here. So let me pull up that. Okay, so I have that here in the ebook laid out. And in this portion, it's going to be a combination of 8 notes in all, and you're going to have that double stop combination. Remember that chording based on the 3rd and 1st strings, the pinching motion. You're now going to find the 5th fret with that combination. Your index finger is going to finger the 3rd string on the 5th fret. Your middle finger is going to finger the bottom string on the 5th fret. You'll play that double stop combination here. So there's going to be 4 notes in this sequence, and he's going to go from this 5th fret to the 4th fret, maintaining that same chording, back to the 5th fret. So there's 4 notes here in the portion where he goes, I'm gonna leave this town, I'm gonna leave this town, 1, 2, 3, 4, I'm gonna leave this town. And then he follows that up with another 4 notes, which are now going to sound like this. So it'll be like this from the beginning. It's I'm gonna leave this town, bid you farewell. And that in that sequence, it's continuing on the 5th fret. You're gonna go, I'm gonna bid you. He goes to the 6th fret here, maintaining that same chording. I'm gonna bid so it's from the 5th to the 6th to the 2nd fret to the open. I didn't explain that too well, but in 8 notes all, 8 or 9 notes, that sequence from the beginning will be like this. I'm gonna leave this town, bid you farewell. So it's 5th, 6th, 5th, 2, 0. 5th fret, 6th fret, 5th fret, 2nd fret, open. Bid you farewell. Bid you farewell. For the beginning, it's I'm gonna leave this town. Bid you farewell. Back to the C. To that A chord slop. So that last verse, I'll play it from the beginning, will sound like this. It will go, I'm gonna leave this town. I bid you farewell. See, I'm gonna leave this town. Bid you farewell. Yes, I shall return again. I'll have a grand story to tell. Back to that. So that's in that last verse, in that last stanza, he's carrying it by those double stops. So the final portion of the song is going back to what we learned in the introduction, is that wind down on the 5th and the 8th fret. He goes back using that combination, except this time it's shortened, and he resolves the entire song in a C7 chord, which is typical of what he does in his songs in standard tuning. Always ends in that 7th chord. And now what you're going to do here is in that last verse, or the final ending of the song, you're going to play this double stop combination over the 8th fret on the 4th and 1st strings, the double stop. 4th and 1st strings only. And you're going to play a series of 6 notes, 3 notes featuring in the 8th fret, 1, 2, 3. Then you're going to go to shift to the 7th fret. You're going to play that 3 times. 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then he only plays this combination of double stops over this 8th and 7th frets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then he plays this arpeggio on the C7 chord, starting on the 5th string, 6th fret. He leads into this C7 chord first by kicking it off in this bass note here, the 6th fret, 5th string. You play that twice. So again, it's the first 6 notes will sound like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Then 7, 7, 8, 7, 8. Then you're going to chord. You're gonna bar on the 5th fret from the 4th string down to the 1st string with the index finger. You're gonna bar that, and you're going to finger the bottom string on the 6th fret with the middle finger. Play that C7 chord. So that arpeggio will altogether will sound like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's an arpeggio going down the strings from the 5th string down to the 1st string. So it's the 5th string, then you bar that chord and you play the 4th string, 3rd string, 2nd string, 1st string. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that ending will sound like this. And that's the end of From 4 Till Late. So to sum it all up, it's the key of C. You're having this kind of boogie rhythm which appears in C. Then F. You know, pretty simple measures. D7, G7, A7. Very typical key of C concepts. And followed by the double stops. So a really beautiful song. I remember when I first learned this song, I always played it. It's a very bright and beautiful melody, and I hope that you're able to get a hang on it as you progress through these lessons. So as I mentioned before, definitely look at the ebook. As I showed you briefly, it has demonstrations of chords, everything you need to know to learn the song. And for my more advanced players, I know you love the tablature, you want to get right to the point, check out the ebook on my website in the information settings. And again, thank you so much for following along with these lessons in Robert Johnson. There will be more to follow in conjunction with this new ebook. Definitely some great masterpieces that are going to be broken down. So if you haven't already, like my Facebook page, Delta Lu Music. I'm very active on the Facebook page. Post a lot of cool videos and little updates of what's going on in Delta Lu Music. Subscribing on YouTube is very much appreciated, and definitely check out my website and my overall mission about preserving this music. And with that, thank you again for following along. My name is Delta Lu, and I'm signing off.